Hi guys, I want to do a case study with you on recurrent pregnancy loss. I'm Dr. Jane. I'm a naturopathic doctor and natural fertility expert, and I help couples who have been struggling with infertility for over a year get to the root cause of their infertility struggles and help them conceive naturally. So in this series, I want to talk to you guys about different case studies that I've worked with, and I want to show you what it looks like from start to finish of obviously like starting to work together and then a finished product, aka a successful pregnancy and a live birth for different kinds of cases. So recurrent pregnancy loss is a really difficult one to obviously go through. It could be very traumatic. I think it is very traumatic for the couple and for the woman. I've only gone through one miscarriage myself, and it was a really difficult thing. It was one of the most difficult things that I have gone through. So I couldn't imagine going through it multiple times. And so as a mother and obviously a natural fertility expert, I want to know what's going on and why is the body not carrying the pregnancy, what's missing. And every woman is different in terms of what's happening. Every couple is different. We often overlook the male component of recurrent pregnancy loss. In this case, the male component wasn't it, but there are cases where it is. And so bringing on the males, when I work with couples in my Maximize Your Fertility program, I bring on the guy right off the bat, even if they say that the sperm is fine and no issues, just because sometimes I'll actually catch that there are issues with the sperms. And other times it's like, hey, this is really about you guys coming together and coming on a journey. And the female is going to need some support. And a lot of the guys, they just have no idea how to support you. They want to help you. They see that you're anxious. They see that you're going through this really difficult time, and they just don't have the tools to help you. So they feel kind of helpless and powerless in the situation. And so when I work with couples together, it's like helping the male partner understand how to support you through this difficult time, and then doing anything that they can or need to do to support their fertility. So let me share my screen. And I made these notes because I want to make sure that I didn't forget anything as I presented this case. So when this person came to me, she had two miscarriages in a row, and she actually didn't have any issues getting pregnant. But that first miscarriage really spooked her. And so she didn't want to try again. There was a lot for her to go through because, of course, when we have a miscarriage, we're told just to go home and have a miscarriage. There's no support. And emotionally, it could be really devastating for some women. And it was for her. So she waited for a while to try again. And then when she got pregnant, miscarried the same time, 6 to 7 weeks. In terms of what lab work she had done beforehand versus what I did when we started working together. Pregnancy, is a natural process. Our fertility is going to be a reflection of our health. And so if we're not getting pregnant or staying pregnant, what's the body trying to tell us? It's not capable of carrying that pregnancy to term. And it could be the health of the egg and the sperm, one or the other or both, or it's the environment, aka you ladies, the uterus, the womb, whether it's like high inflammation, your immune system is dysregulated. There's something like an obstruction, so the implantation can't actually happen because she was miscarrying between 6 to 7 weeks. It could be either of those things. It could be the egg, it could be the sperm, it could be both, or it could be something in the environment. And this is why we run a bunch of lab work to help us understand what is her body trying to tell us. And so my patients, when they come to me, their goal is to achieve a healthy pregnancy. And they can't do that because they don't have any answers. And so they can't find anything that's working. And there's no professional support that's reliable or consistent. And that was the case for her as well, as I'll jump into what we found. But I just want to tell you a little bit about my thought process and how I do things, so you start to understand, because a lot of the times people are like, but I've done everything. And I promise you that you haven't, because there's just so many things to do. It's more about, well, I believe that I have done everything that I know to do, and that should be enough to get pregnant. But if it's not enough to get pregnant, it's really easy to get stuck in this like victim mentality of like, but I've done so much. It's really easy to get stuck in this victim mentality, but like, I've done so much and this person didn't have to do any of it. And this is, again, when I really encourage you to not get yourself caught up in the comparison game and just really get in tune with your body and what it's telling you, because it's very frustrating when you're working really hard and you can't figure it out. But why we can't figure out what's working until we have answers. And I think like 100% of my patients who are coming in to see me, they think they have answers where they very much only have a portion of an answer. And that's why when they're trying things out, it doesn't really work because it's not a complete picture. And so the first thing I do is this initial consultation where we'll do a proper health assessment. And this is where start to connect the dots between the symptoms and what the patient is experiencing. We run a lot of labs to help us understand what's going on inside the body so we're not guessing. And then we track a bunch of data. So I use, for example, I use the Aura Ring to help me understand the actual stress on the body. So people will say, I'm fine. So for this patient, for example, she would have 8-9 hours of sleep and she would still feel really tired. And so that's not normal. And when we put the Aura Ring on her, it's like, hey, the quality of the sleep isn't bad at all, but your heart rate is really elevated and that heart rate variability is really low. So there's a sign of stress on the body. And so something is missing, something is going on. And so we want to, as a detective, I'm going to say, hey, pregnancy is a natural process. If it's not happening or you can't carry to term, something is missing and we just need to spend some time figuring it out. And so she had some lab work done before me and she had some inflammation. She maybe had some autoimmune markers, maybe not. Like she never got a straight answer. And so when we ran some things, the big things that stood out, if you will, is she had quite a bit of inflammation in the body. So her HDL was really great. But when we look at this inflammation, the CRP is a non-specific inflammatory marker, and that's high. And the oxidized LDL, so it's hard for the nutrients to get in. It's hard for the toxins to get out. So we know that there's oxidative damage being done. And MPO is a marker that's more elevated if there's more vascular damage in the actual like veins and arteries. So there's quite a bit of inflammation. Her blood sugar is okay, a bit of dysregulation. And you look at like sodium, that's really high. It's almost like there's just this really high concentration. So we're not dehydrated properly. Liver enzymes, for the most part, was good. And when I see this stuff, here's what it can get. I don't want to say confusing, but a lot of my patients, when I run the blood work, it's not bad lab work. And this is why they're confused because the doctor will say, well, the labs look fine. Maybe there's a little bit of inflammation and she's taking some curcumin, but the problem is she doesn't know where that inflammation is coming from. And this is where that deeper lab testing really kicks in. Lab work is great to get a basic like understanding, but when you're starting to experience things like unexplained infertility, recurrent pregnancy loss, endometriosis, those are serious conditions. And you need to understand where the disease is coming from, as opposed to just looking at the blood work. That's just a baseline that's good to track data. And like really nothing in the thyroid, she had the RDW, the width of her red blood cells was a little bit on the low side. The Diuretic hemoglobin, when that starts to come up, usually it's a sign of chronic infection or inflammation. And so she has quite a bit of inflammation. We already know that. And it just kind of confirms it. We looked to make sure her MTHFR and there was no thrombotic issues, which she didn't have. And when we tested her micronutrients, this is just like a panel that's going to help us understand. This is how I would actually love for people to supplement instead of guessing what they think they need, is to run a proper nutrient test analysis and see. There wasn't a lot of things that were in the red, if you will. Her vitamin A and B2 are a bit low, but if I scroll down and I like this view a bit better, you can see that the average is in the middle, but a lot of her nutrients were on the low side. So like vitamin A, really important antioxidant, really important for immune system, for eye health, for egg health. And so right away, that's low. We see B2 is really important for detoxification. So I'm going to start to connect the dots and think about what's going on for this patient. Their B6 was on the low range, B5 was on the low range, vitamin C is on the low range. So even though the reds are not, there's not that many reds, there's a lot, what I say is in the yellow, and we want to address those. So again, when my patients come to me, they've been trying to conceive for a while, right? It's been 2-3 years. And healthy pregnancy is this pinnacle, it's the top, that's the goal. That's why people are coming to me. But what we have to remember is that pregnancy is the hardest thing that the female body will ever do. It takes a lot of work for the body. It takes a lot of energy and resources. And I look at it as the final exam. So if you're taking that SAT, the final exam, over and over again, and you're failing it, you would probably go to the professor and say, hey, which section of the exam am I failing and by how much? In pregnancy, we just look at, well, I didn't get pregnant, or I pregnant and miscarried, I pregnant and miscarried. And so it becomes this kind of mysterious thing, like maybe I'll do it's enough, maybe I won't. And in reality, there's actual milestones that you need to hit, or that would be good to have, because it will increase our probability of conceiving and holding on to that pregnancy. And so things like thyroid function needs to be good, gut, immune system, right? Including inflammation, blood sugar regulation, your liver function, hormones, obviously. And so there's a little list of things that we need. And when I start to look at it, some couples will flat out have red flags, but others won't. Others will just have like a million little yellow flags. And so just because you don't have any red flags, we still have to pay attention to the yellow flags because they're there, right? The yellow flags eventually add up to the red flag. And so when I scroll down on her page, I very much see a bunch of things that are just low, like vitamin E is a really important antioxidant. It's so important for thyroid health, immune system health, egg quality, skin health. And there's some stuff that she was probably overdosing on in terms of supplements, and that's why it came up high. But on the nutrient panel, like there's just a bunch of things that you could see. Glutamine, that's a gut amino acid. It's on the low side. Now, why is it high here? So serum is like how much she's getting in now. That's red blood cell. White blood cell is more long-term what's going on. So I look at both. Serine is an amino acid that's really important for our nervous system. So when you're low on serine, you're going to have almost this kind of high cortisol picture, overthinking things, being anxious. And of course, that was her. And so there's lots of little things like that that we start to pay attention to, but the micronutrient, it still doesn't tell us why. It just shows us what. Okay, there's some nutrient deficiencies, but why do we have nutrient deficiencies? And I really want to kind of change this in the naturopathic world, functional medicine world, that nutrient deficiencies are not the root cause. And it's actually toxicities that cause the nutrient deficiencies. Because guess what? She was taking a bunch of curcumin to help decrease her inflammation, but it wasn't working because she wasn't addressing the root cause. So even in, curcumin is really great for inflammation. It's not the only herb that you can use, but it's not addressing the root cause. And when we're talking about recurrent pregnancy loss, like I said, it could be a little bit of an egg quality thing, and it could be, or a sperm quality thing, or it could be the environment. And for her, because the way every time she would get pregnant, all her symptoms would just spike up. Like her eyes would start burning. She would need steroids for her eyes. Her hip would really hurt. All of these things would really, really flare up. We know that it's like her body could just not handle the stress of the pregnancy. And it was really aggravating her immune system. And your immune system has to accept the foreign body, aka the sperm, and then the fertilized egg in the embryo as its own. And so that whole process just wasn't happening. As soon as she was getting pregnant, like the body was going into overdrive. We did the Dutch test on her as well, and her estrogen was, you could see it is quite high. Progesterone is good, so there's good signs of ovulation, but that estrogen is really, really high. And so she was getting a lot of PMS symptoms, clotting, painful periods. Just because you're not dying doesn't mean that it's okay. For her cortisol, it's like she really wasn't producing, she was metabolizing it really quickly. And so it wasn't sticking around in her system for long enough. And that will cause a lot of fatigue and brain fog because we still need cortisol. Cortisol is really important for us to feel motivation and focus and, vibrancy and energy. And that just wasn't happening for her. And like I said, that estrogen was on the high, and that red estrogen. So this is the bad estrogen that's associated with the different kinds of cancers, whether it's breast cancer or cervical cancer. And we want to make sure that that guy doesn't go very much over 11%. And so she was right there. And that's just long-term proactive health. When your liver is working well, when you're metabolizing estrogens properly, cancer is not a mystery. We don't have to just like, oh my God, I guess I'm the unlucky one. It's like, no, you could see these things coming literally decades before it happens. We just are very much not taught by the conventional system in our school. It's all infiltrated that like, hey, if you have a problem, just take a medication. But in reality, it's like, no, we could see it. We could see that the function of the liver is suboptimal and she's building up all this excess estrogen already. And 10 years of excess estrogen is going to lead to some things. So those are kind of the big things with the findings in the Dutch test. She did have a little bit of this norepinephrine, the dopamine metabolite, on the low end range, but it's still within range. And so kind of starts to tell me a bit of gut function. I do test the urine, the stool, and the blood because the body's going to show us in different ways when things are coming off balance. So sometimes in the Dutch, there isn't a lot, but there is a lot in the gut. And sometimes it's a lot in the, and really it's, I always say your lab's very good as your interpreter. It's being able to see the whole picture and interpret and put the pieces together. I used to run only one lab at a time. And it's like, you just get one piece of information. You're like, great, now I have to run more labs to understand this. So I do run a bunch of labs and interpret them, obviously, for my patients in a digestible way. And hopefully even for you to like educate that I haven't had any of this stuff done. So if you feel really hopeless and frustrated in your journey and you haven't had like a proper lab analysis when someone looks at everything and pieces it together for you, it's just like I drew at the beginning of that triangle. You cannot find something that's working until you have answers. And the thing that you should really invest your time, money, and energy in is figuring out your answers. Because once you know the answers, the steps are like, don't get me wrong, the steps to fix it are still going to be hard. There's going to be work for you to do, change your lifestyle, your diet, start taking supplements, sauna therapies, all that stuff. But they're all going to actually work now. And that's the big difference. People are like, well, I'm not motivated to change my eating because every time I do, I don't feel better. And it's like, because that's not the thing that you should be doing. You should be feeling better every time if you're working towards your health or your fertility, you need to be improving. And I draw the staircase, for my patient all the time. It's like, what's preventing you from getting pregnant over here is going to be very different than what's preventing you from getting pregnant over here. It's just making sure that you know which step are you at and what is it that you need to implement versus, Susie and Bob. So that's kind of the personalization aspect that I believe if you've been struggling with infertility for a long time, you just need. If you're looking at preventing, then like you just need the basic stuff done, track some data and start changing some lifestyle, and you're going to notice a big difference in how you feel. But, we ran the environmental toxins. This is where we really get into the why. So like, why is she experiencing the miscarriages? More importantly, I look at the symptoms, right? So if I share the symptoms with you again, it's chronic inflammation. She had iritis. She had crazy hip pain, fatigue, brain fog, unrefreshed sleep, some bloating, indigestion, sinus issues, allergies. And she actually ended up, got pregnant twice on her own, miscarried, and went to the fertility clinic. And of course, the first thing they did was like, okay, well, let's do an IUI, let's get you medicated, and then let's put you on prednisone and some trigger shots and progesterone. And she actually felt like she felt worse, and she didn't get pregnant for the 2 cycles that she was with fertility clinic. She had less white cervical fluid production, and she definitely just like felt worse. Sure, like maybe her eye pain wasn't there, but she wasn't like this vibrant, energetic, I feel amazing, not anxious. And so this is all the stuff that we found, and that's what I'm taking you through right now. So environmental toxins, nothing came up really in the red, but there was enough in the yellow that are really damaging endocrine disruptors. So perchlorate is you see like she's closer to the high range than she is to the low range. And so of course I'm going to look at that closely, and enough yellow flags is going to warrant a red flag. And to me, that's enough. I'm not going to just, oh, well, it's not that bad. It's like, no, we got to clean this up. So perchlorate can be like found in rocket fuel, but also in our food packaging. And now we see it infiltrated through our water and our soil. So it's a nasty chemical and toxin that absolutely causes oxidative damage, stress, and is connected to developing different cancers, but also fertility issues. Atrazine and glyphosates are really, really potent herbicides that are widely used, and atrazine is a gnarly one for reproductive system. I have a case of premature ovarian failure that I'm working on, and her levels of atrazine were so high. So I think that exposure came through the womb, not just like her lifetime. She's accumulated it, because the levels that they are is high, and obviously the case of having this premature ovarian failure. But again, they're endocrine disruptors. BPA is an endocrine disruptor. So just like really understanding what's going on in her environment. If I had a male patient, this is another unexplained infertility case, but he worked with a bunch of paints and different, like, construction, and all of the stuff was just like lit up in red. And it's really great to be able to show that, because it's like, hey, listen, you're actually poisoning your body every day. So we need to figure out how to change, like getting air filtration, making sure that the space that you're working is ventilated, you're using non-toxic products as much as you can. It really does matter, and we could see it on testing. And sometimes I find that that's really helpful. And then the gut one was really helpful as well. Her diversity in the gut was really poor and low. She had quite a bit of inflammation in the gut. This marker is often elevated when there is an immune system activation problem that's going on. Her digestion wasn't terrible. She was absorbing and digesting food, but she just had no short chain fatty acids. And these are really important for the mucosal lining of the gut. And so when these guys are going to be low, we know she's headed for a leaky gut if she doesn't already have it. And so if we look here, she doesn't have the leaky gut, but she is heading for it because that mucosal lining is just not being replenished. And the gut is always like breaking down and rebuilding, breaking down and rebuilding. So really important to take care of that. The microbiome of the gut is going to transfer into the reproductive microbiome, aka the uterus where the baby will grow. And there's a really big connection between what happens in the gut and what happens in the reproductive system. So that's why I always test the gut, because it's just like, it's a huge reflection on your overall health. The immune system markers here for her was just in the tank. And the reason that it was in the tank, even though she was experiencing a bunch of inflammatory type symptoms, is because it's probably been inflammation for a long time. So like chronic inflammation, chronic infections eventually will tank your immune system. And so she just had nothing in the tank. And then there was some really important bacteria like the bifido, and there's some lactobacillus strains that were really low, and then some overgrowth of the guys that, are going to cause some issues. For the most part, like the Enterococcus species, and that's really closely related to autoimmunity. So none of these things are causations, they're correlations, and it's based on research and studies. So they've tested the Enterococcus species, and when they see overgrowth of Enterococcus species, there was a high correlation of developing autoimmunity. And so if you already have autoimmune disease, you probably have an imbalance in the microbiome. The gut stool analysis has evolved a lot over the last 5 years, 10 years since I've started to run it. And I think it will continue to evolve, because we still know so little about the body and how it works. And honestly, as a practitioner, I challenge myself to unlearn the process that I've learned before, thinking like that's the only way that it can work, because we're just learning so much more about the human body. And they've done, fecal transplants on kids with autism, and their autism drastically improved. Or they've done fecal transplant on someone who has IBS or metabolic disorders, and those things went away. So it just goes to show that our microbiome will actually dictate our health so much. And when I see the Clostridium overgrowth, I know that she's not emptying well. It's inefficient. Now we're looking into almost like internal toxic load. Bacteria, even if it's good, when it's overgrowing, it's not just sitting there, it's producing a bunch of gases, and it's going to be adding to the toxic load. Just like when you crack open a beer or open a kombucha and makes that sound, it's like, yeah, that's fermentation. And that literally happens inside our guts. That's why when you're feeling bloated all the time, it's like all these bugs are fermenting and you're not emptying well. And the Clostridium is one of those bugs that really shows us that we're not emptying well. And she was experiencing those symptoms. And like I said, some of the lactobacillus strains were really low, the bifido. So I really like this test. There was a couple more findings that are really important. So for heavy metals, she had one barium heavy metal that was quite elevated. Now, barium is more of a radioactive element. And so I'm now going to say that there's probably some oxidative damage stress that going on. And we've already seen it through the inflammation, oxidized LDL, but also now with egg quality, that's going to be huge. Now when we saw those micronutrients, vitamin E, vitamin A being low, the body, it's the toxicities that are causing the nutrient deficiencies. And so even though she might be taking really high load of vitamins and minerals, instead of that going to repairing her tissue, it's going towards dealing with the toxicity, because it's very toxic for the body to have this stuff in the tissue. Now, we think it was a water supply. You would be shocked how much like radioactive elements and how much other crap there is in our water. So that was kind of our assumption, is that's where she's getting it. And then she had a really high mold load. So the aflatoxins and patulins are more associated with kind of food exposure and your body like not breaking it down. The digestive tract, when it's not very efficient, you're going to start to accumulate it, because we're all exposed to mold, and mold is not like, we're designed to break down mold in the body. It's just that when the body's overloaded, it's not breaking it down and it starts to accumulate, and then it starts to cause oxidative damage stress. It depletes your nutrients. It can cause a lot of issues. But she had a couple of these strains of black mold that are quite high, right? Like 5 times the amount, 3 times the amount. And that's, I think, is really contributing to that immune system being suppressed, the chronic inflammation, the brain fog. Oh, I need to sleep and I don't feel refreshed. Because guess what happens during sleep? During sleep, your body is supposed to repair and restore. But if you sleep for 8 hours and then you're not feeling repaired and restored, it means your body needs even more time. And usually it's a sign of a high toxic load. So when people are like, I just need my 9 hours, it's like, no, you're actually toxic. My husband used to sleep for 9 hours and feel unrefreshed, and he had a lot of mold. And now he gets up at like 4:30, 5 a.m. And it's just like, I'm up, I'm good. Like I had my 8 hours. So it makes a big difference. In the organic acid summary, so this is another urine test. She had 2 markers that were really high in yeast and fungus. And this is an acetylcysteine. This is a really important amino acid for liver function. And so when it's high, it's a sign that she is excreting it a lot. She's using it a lot. So there's oxidative stress that's going on her system. And so the body is just overwhelmed. And if I kind of take you through what the summary is, it's like the mold, the yeast, and the fungus was really wearing out, suppressing her immune system and really damaging the organs of detoxification. And then, of course, it would impact her egg quality. So I think it was these 2 components where it's like her immune system was overreacting and the egg quality wasn't quite there to help carry the pregnancy through as well, because there's so much energy that is required in order for the pregnancy to be successful. It's not just about that first little bit, right? It's 10 months plus the birth after plus the postpartum. So we have to keep that whole picture in mind. Even though our goal is to get pregnant, we still have to keep that picture in mind, because as I draw this out for my patients, your fertility journey is just the beginning. And then we have pregnancy, and then we have postpartum. And this is a really critical time, not just for you as a female, but for the baby as well, to set them up for success and to really build that generational health, right? I know sometimes it's really easy to say, well, this person didn't do this and they got pregnant. It's like, well, are they healthy? Are they happy? Are they fulfilled? Is that the pregnancy that you want? Because if it's not, then don't compare yourself to those people and don't look up to those people, because they're on a very different path. And so we really focus on fertility being your healing journey. So then pregnancy can become this empowering process. And for her, it's like the moment she would get pregnant, the body was like, I'm not ready. And then, she would miscarry. So it's like it was just causing too much stress for her system. She got the Oura ring right away as well. And we wanted to see the quality and quantity of her sleep. And because her quality of sleep was good, I actually really encouraged her to sleep more. Sometimes you feel guilty sleeping and still being tired because you're like, but I have to get all this stuff done. And it's like, your body needs to sleep. Just sleep and know that you'll eventually need less sleep. And that's how we'll know you're getting better. Starting to prioritize movement. It's one of those things when you have a lot of pain, it's actually better to move a little bit than not at all, because stagnation is going to cause more pain. And then we fixed a lot of her eating, obviously cleaned up her environment, getting better quality source of water, getting rid of plastic, switching out toxic products. All of that stuff is just going to take time. We did a lot of detoxing with her. I do something called the 10-week detox with my patients, but that's just like a general cleanup. And then we'll do some parasite cleansing. We'll do some liver boosts. There's coffee enemas, parasite cleansing, candida cleansing. When we retested the blood work at 5 to 6 months, she really felt like she was ready to start trying again. So if I show you this, her CRP went from 3.3 to 0.2. This is the lowest C-reactive protein she's ever had, and she truly felt it. She felt great. Now, she just got blood work with her doctor, and this is all they could kind of run for her. But for the most part, it was good. Like we saw enough improvements in the blood work and she felt better that we said, hey, maybe it's time to try again. And of course she wants to try again because now she's been waiting for 2.5 years to have a baby. And it's like, she feels like she's falling behind. There's that pressure. And so we said, like, let's do it. I can't tell you if you're going to pass the tests this time, right? We're taking the test. All we know is we've put in this work. Let's test it out and let's see what happens. And she got pregnant on the first try. Of course, she got really anxious. And when she reached out to her GP and the OB to run some progesterone and to run some thyroid and an HCG, she just like had to pull teeth to get it done. And it was really hard for her to get in. They didn't want to get her in for ultrasounds. She had to wait until she had a third miscarriage. And so that really spiraled her. And when she got pregnant, all her symptoms came back. They weren't as bad as when we first started working together, but they were still there. And so she miscarried. And it was really hard. I worked with patients who've miscarried 5 times, and so it's like, you don't know if the work that you have put in is enough. And what we actually ended up doing is we did a lot of testing right as she was miscarrying for some lab work, because it's like the symptoms would be under control when she wasn't under stress. But as soon as she would get pregnant, she would get all this flare of stuff. And it's easy to ignore it, to say, oh, it's okay, it's just because of X, Y, and Z. But in reality, so her body's not handling the stress of pregnancy. Pregnancy is the most stressful thing that the female body will do. And so if under stress, under pressure, your body's cracking, it's showing us that there is a weakest link and we need to look at it. What is it? What's going on? So we had to run some more lab work, and there were some really big shifts. There was physical shifts, but there was also mental and emotional. It's a lot of spiritual growth as well, to go through a lot of losses and figure out what's going on and why it's happening for you. It's very traumatic. And so she did some counseling on her own. We did some counseling where she just had a really deep fear of being abandoned, left behind, being alone, feeling unworthy. And she just did not want to feel that feeling. And it was like the universe, God, whatever your belief system is, was just forcing her to feel it. It's like it was hard for her to believe that good things were ever going to happen to her. She would spiral into really negative thoughts that would just keep her scared at home, not wanting to try, not wanting to do anything. And she realized that like she hasn't really processed her miscarriages. She kind of like numbed herself through the experience because it was so painful. All of the miscarriages, not just this last one, but the first 2 that she had. And it was, like I said, the universe, God, whatever you believe in, was just forcing her to actually feel and go through the emotions and learn. Like she had some family relationship stuff that she really had to work through, but it was really empowering to see her go through that growth and step into that space and just like lean into the emotions and start to feel the pain more instead of numbing herself. And then she also started working with an acupuncturist and another muscle testing functional medical doctor. It was just like an easier way for us to test some stuff to see what else was going on. She still had quite a bit of candida, mold, yeast, fungus, and parasites. Like she was passing parasites right before she got pregnant. So I kind of knew we weren't done, but at the same time, it's like you never know if it's enough. And if you feel ready and you want to try, then you're just going to be ready and you want to try, and we'll see what happens. Could we have done more cleansing before she tried? Maybe. Would that have turned out differently? I don't know, right? There's no guarantee in this space, but she did acupuncture. We did lots of detoxing. She did a lot of mental and emotional clearing. And another thing we did to make sure that she had the support the moment that she got pregnant is she interviewed a bunch of clinics and found an OB that would run tests and actually prescribe like to progesterone for her or anything else that she needed. So if she needed to go in for an ultrasound, then she could. She didn't have to wait and like call and be pregnant already. So that really helped her feel supported and kind of took the edge off. And we just continue working on the things that we knew we needed to. Like I said, the detoxification, the parasite cleansing, candida cleansing, all that jazz. What really helped is having the support from the OBs and obviously myself and the acupuncture. Like she needed a whole team of people that she could contact and go to make sure that like any anxious thought that she had, we could bring it down. And so like my patients can message me through my platform, basically like text message me. And so it's like that really helped her just feel like, okay, somebody is going to answer my question. I don't have to wait for 2 weeks to go see a doctor and run an ultrasound. And I think we really underestimate that. But having the support for women is so, so important. It really helped to bring her anxiety down. And let me see, I think I have the lab tests for the final pregnancy that we got ready. So progesterone jumped up to 40.5, which was a great progesterone number for her. This is like when she found out she was pregnant. And like I said, that progesterone just kept going up, which before it was at like 15 or 20. And let me tell you, if you're miscarrying because your progesterone is low, sometimes we need to bring that progesterone up. Like the body's just like, oh, I don't know how to do it, and you just help to support it. But if progesterone is really low, there's no amount of supplementation that will help you, because it's actually a sign of the quality of the egg. Just know that that's the body's way of saying that's like, I'm not ready. This is not the right thing. And we often take miscarriages as this personal worth thing. And it's just not, it's literally your body telling you that something is missing. And it's in a very big way. And it's going to bring a lot of negative emotions, but those emotions were already there. And that's kind of what I was talking about. Like, what were the shifts that she made? She realized that she was carrying a lot of negative emotions, and they've been in her for like since childhood. Like there was a lot of unprocessed childhood trauma, and she was just living that out now through her pregnancies every time. It was just forcing her to really deal with it. So the support really helped. And of course, she still worries and overthinks she's carrying while she's having twins, actually. And so it's funny how, when we first start working together, I want to have 2 kids and maybe 3, and I feel like I'm falling behind. And it's like, you never know what's in store for you. You really just have to make your fertility journey about healing and be open to the fact, like, just know that there's going to be a lot of ups and downs within the journeys, and you're going to fall a lot and you have to pick yourself back up. But to me, it's like giving up is not an option, because it's like giving up is just like you giving up on yourself, right? But I don't want you to put yourself through hell. I see women put themselves through hell when it comes to all the egg retrievals and all the, like, it's so much, and it's the opposite of healing. It's just your body being manipulated into a pregnancy instead of you healing and figuring out what the body's telling you. And so I believe that pregnancy is a natural process. And I think that we owe it to ourselves to really get down to the answers of why we're not getting pregnant or staying pregnant, and giving our body time to heal. Sometimes people stop. Like she easily could have stopped at the 6-month mark. Like she flat out said, like, maybe it's adoption, maybe I'm not meant to have kids. Like those are very real thoughts. And just know you don't want to make those kinds of decisions when you're in a very heightened emotional state. But usually it's just a sign that something else is missing. And when she miscarried over here before we met versus here, she was still at a different place. And we have to recognize that. We looked at her labs, we looked at her data, like she was in a different place. It just wasn't here yet. And so she needed a couple more tweaks, and it was hard. And she, more cleansing, more, all this, more pills, more of this stuff. And you don't know if it's going to work, like you genuinely don't. There's always something. And I think your pregnancy, your fertility journey should just be you coming to the best version of yourself, and you guys doing that together as a couple. So, just kind of the takeaways that miscarriage doesn't mean your body's broken. It just means something is still missing. Even if you put all the work in, that usually just means that there's still something missing, and that's okay. You might just need to take a break from the journey. And pregnancy loss can steal your joy from pregnancy you have today, but it's important to keep healing and keep working on yourself with each experience. Each experience is going to teach you something. I hope you guys find this story inspiring and motivational, and it allows you to reassess where you are in your fertility journey and what it is that, what you want to make your fertility journey about, how to make it about healing instead of feeling like you're just kind of spiraling out of control. If you have any questions, I'd love it for you to, whether you send me a DM through my Instagram at Dr. Jane Levesque or post it down below. If you are interested to find out what it's like to work with me, feel free to fill out an application, maximize your fertility program, and I'll see if I'm the right person to help you. Like I said, my goal with these case studies is really to show you what that whole journey looks like, why we don't want to give up, how we actually need to test and look at data and pick ourselves back up in the moments where we feel broken and devastated and there's no other way out there. I promise you that there is. It's just you need the right support, and you need probably more support than you think. And you need to reevaluate and just keep moving in the direction towards healing. And I promise you that will lead to more peace in your heart. Maybe sometimes it doesn't lead to a baby, right? I'm not here to say that it always does, but I want to share these cases because these people genuinely thought that they weren't meant to have children. And we just needed to do a couple more tweaks. So thank you guys again for being here. Please share this with somebody that you think will find it helpful. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for tuning in.